Commander Elena Vasquez had spent 30 years exploring dead worlds. She had walked through the ruins of civilizations that had risen and fallen before humanity learned to use fire. She had cataloged the bones of species that had dreamed of reaching the stars but never quite made it. Nothing surprised her anymore, or so she thought. The planet did not have a name that humans could pronounce. The Galactic Survey had labeled it XR7721, a designation as cold and forgettable as the frozen methane seas that covered most of its surface. But deep beneath those seas, in caverns carved by ancient hands, something waited. "Commander, you need to see this." Lieutenant Park's voice crackled through her helmet radio. Elena pulled herself away from the wall she had been examining and made her way through the narrow passage. The stone beneath her boots was smooth, worn down by countless feet over countless years. Whoever had built this place had used it for a very long time. She found Park standing in a chamber so vast that her helmet lights could not reach the ceiling. The young lieutenant was staring at the walls, his scanner forgotten in his hand. Elena understood why when she looked up. Every surface was covered in writing. Strange symbols flowed across the stone like frozen rivers, spiraling upward into the darkness. Between the symbols were images, carved with such skill that they seemed ready to move at any moment. Elena saw creatures she did not recognize, worlds she had never visited, and events that defied understanding. "What is this place?" Park whispered. Elena did not answer. She was too busy looking at one particular carving near the center of the nearest wall. It showed a planet, third from a small yellow star. She knew that planet. She had been born on it. "That's Earth," she said quietly. Park moved closer, his eyes wide. "That's not possible. This chamber is at least 50,000 years old. Our scans confirmed it. Humans didn't even have written language back then." "I know what our scans said." Elena reached out and touched the carving. The stone was cold beneath her gloved fingers. Around the image of Earth, the strange symbols seemed to glow faintly in her helmet lights. "Get the translation team down here, all of them." Within an hour, the chamber was full of scientists. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the expedition's lead linguist, stood at the center of the chaos, directing her team with sharp gestures and sharper words. She was a small woman with gray hair and the focused intensity of someone who had dedicated her life to understanding the unknowable. "The writing system is unlike anything in our databases," she reported to Elena after several hours of analysis. "But there are patterns, mathematical constants, astronomical references, universal concepts that any advanced species would understand. We can crack this. It will just take time." "How much time?" Tanaka smiled grimly. "Less than you might think. Whoever wrote this wanted to be understood. They built in redundancies, teaching tools embedded in the text itself. It's almost like they designed it for readers who might not share their language or culture." 3 days later, Elena stood in the same chamber, surrounded by her senior staff. Tanaka held a tablet displaying her preliminary translations. Her hands were shaking. "It's a prophecy," the linguist said. "Or rather, a collection of prophecies. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. The builders, as I've been calling them, cataloged predictions about species across the galaxy. Species that would rise, achieve greatness, and then fall. Every single one of them." "Every species falls," Elena said. "That's not exactly news." "You don't understand." Tanaka scrolled through her tablet with trembling fingers. "These aren't vague predictions. They're specific. Names, dates, exact circumstances of destruction. And they've all come true. Every prophecy we've been able to verify matches historical records from the galactic archives. The Vorten hegemony, the crystalline consciousness, the empire of 1,000 suns. All of them rose and fell exactly as the builders predicted." The chamber fell silent. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the frozen world above them. "And Earth," she asked, "what does it say about Earth?" Tanaka's face was pale. "That's the strange part. The prophecy about humanity is different from all the others. It's longer, more detailed, and it doesn't follow the same pattern. What pattern? All the other prophecies follow a simple structure: rise, apex, and fall. But the human prophecy, it branches. Multiple paths, multiple outcomes. And there's a section at the end that I can't translate at all. The symbols are different, more complex, almost like they were written by a different hand. Alina moved to the wall where the earth carving waited. In the better lighting her team had installed, she could see details she had missed before. The carving was not just of earth but of humans. Tiny figures reaching upward, their arms extended toward the stars. And around them, written in symbols that seemed to pulse with hidden meaning, was the prophecy of her species. "Read me what you can translate," she ordered. Tanaka cleared her throat. "From the small world of water and stone they shall arise. Born weak, they shall make themselves strong. Born ignorant, they shall pursue knowledge without end. Born mortal, they shall rage against the dying of the light." The words hung in the air like smoke. Alina felt something stir in her chest, a mixture of pride and fear. "There's more," Tanaka continued. "They shall ask questions that others fear to ask. They shall look into the darkness and refuse to look away. They shall reach for things beyond their grasp and in reaching shall grow. This is their nature. This is their curse. This is their gift." "And the part you can't translate?" Tanaka shook her head. "I need more time, but there's something else you should know. The reason I called this meeting." She pointed to a section of the wall near the ceiling. "Those symbols up there, they're a date. A very specific date expressed in terms of astronomical events that we can calculate precisely." "When?" 3 months from now. Something is going to happen, Commander. Something the builders thought was important enough to mark with special emphasis. And somehow it's connected to humanity. Alina stared at the ancient symbols, carved by hands that had turned to dust before her ancestors had learned to walk upright. 50,000 years ago, someone had looked into the future and seen her species. They had written about humans with a detail and care they had not shown to any other civilization, and they had marked a date that was now less than 100 days away. "Contact Earth," she said. "Priority 1 transmission. The Galactic Council needs to see this." As her orders were carried out, Alina remained in the chamber, studying the prophecy of her people. Somewhere in those strange symbols was a secret, a truth that beings from an impossibly distant past had thought worth preserving across millennia. And with the curiosity that the prophecy itself had described, humanity was going to find out what it meant. News of the discovery spread across human space like fire through dry grass. Within a week, every news network, every academic institution, every government agency was talking about the prophecy chamber. The name had stuck, given by some journalist with a flair for drama, and now it was the only thing anyone called it. Ambassador Marcus Webb sat in his office at the United Earth Embassy on Nexus Station, watching the chaos unfold on his displays. The Galactic Council had called an emergency session, and representatives from dozens of species were demanding answers that humanity did not have. "The Vortani delegation is threatening to file a formal protest," his aide reported. "They claim we're hiding information about their ancestors. The prophecy mentions their fall, and they're not happy about it." "The Vortani fell 8,000 years ago," Webb replied without looking up. "What do they want us to do? Apologize for an ancient alien's accurate predictions?" "They want access to the chamber. So does everyone else. The crystalline remnant, the Koroth unity, even the observers have broken their silence. They all want to see what the builders wrote about them." Webb finally looked up. "The observers are speaking." His aide nodded. The observers were the oldest known species in the galaxy, beings of pure energy who had watched civilizations rise and fall for millions of years. They rarely interacted with other races, and never, in recorded history, had they shown interest in archaeological discoveries. "What do they want?" They want to meet with human leadership, privately. They say they have information about the builders. Webb stood slowly. In 30 years of diplomatic service, he had never directly communicated with an observer. Few beings in the galaxy had. The fact that they were reaching out now, when humanity had just uncovered this ancient prophecy, could not be a coincidence. "Arrange the meeting," he said, "and get me everything we have on the builders. If the observers want to talk, I want to be ready." Back on XR 7721, Dr. Tanaka had not slept in 3 days. The untranslatable section of the human prophecy consumed her every waking moment. She had tried every analytical approach she knew, every linguistic algorithm, every pattern recognition technique. Nothing worked. "You're going to kill yourself if you keep this up," Commander Vasquez said, placing a cup of synthetic coffee on Tanaka's workstation. "I'm close to something," Tanaka muttered, her eyes fixed on her screens. "The symbols in this section are not just different, they're layered, multiple meanings encoded on top of each other. It's like the builders were hiding something even from themselves." "Why would they do that?" Tanaka finally looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed but burning with intensity. "Because some truths are dangerous. Some knowledge changes everything once you have it. Maybe they wanted to make sure that whoever decoded this was ready for what they would find." "And are we ready?" "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." Tanaka turned back to her work, and Alina left her to it. The commander made her way through the underground complex, past teams of scientists documenting every symbol, every carving, every trace of the beings who had built this place. They were all driven by the same force that had propelled humanity from caves to stars, the need to understand. She found Lieutenant Park in a smaller chamber they had discovered the previous day. Unlike the main hall, this room contained no prophecies. Instead, its walls showed what appeared to be portraits. Dozens of species, rendered in exquisite detail, arranged in a careful pattern. "I've been cross-referencing these with the Galactic Archives," Park said as she entered. "Most of them match extinct species, races that rose, spread across systems, and then disappeared." "Most of them." Park pointed to a section of the wall near the door. "These don't match anything. The archives have no record of them. Either they existed before the archives began, or they haven't existed yet," Alina finished. Park nodded slowly. "There's one more thing. Look at the arrangement. The known extinct species are on the left, the unknown ones are on the right, and right in the middle at the center of the pattern." Alina stepped closer. At the exact center of the wall was a carving of a human, not a generic representation, but a detailed portrait of a woman with long dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold infinite depth. She was reaching upward with one hand, and in her palm rested a small point of light. "The builders put humanity at the center of their gallery," Park said. "Whatever they believed about the future, we were part of it, a big part." Alina studied the portrait. There was something familiar about the woman's features, something she could not quite place. "Has anyone else seen this?" "Just my team. I wanted to show you first." "Good, keep it quiet for now. We have enough chaos already without adding this to the mix." On Nexus Station, Ambassador Webb entered the meeting chamber where the observer waited. The room had been specially prepared, its atmosphere adjusted to accommodate an energy being, its lighting dimmed to the levels the observers preferred. The observer appeared as a shifting pattern of light and shadow, vaguely humanoid in shape but constantly changing. When it spoke, the words formed directly in Webb's mind, bypassing his ears entirely. "You have found the Chamber of Endings," the observer said. "We wondered when your species would stumble upon it." "You know about the builders." "We knew them, long ago before we became what we are now. They were the oldest, the first to achieve true understanding of the universe's patterns. They could see the threads of cause and effect stretching across time. They could read the future as clearly as you read words on a page." Webb leaned forward. Then the prophecies are real. They actually predicted the rise and fall of civilizations. The observer's form flickered. They did not predict. They saw. The distinction is important. A prediction is a guess about what might happen. The builders saw what would happen with absolute certainty. Every species they documented rose and fell exactly as they described. Every species except one, Webb said quietly. The observer was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice carried a weight of ages. Yes, your species troubled them greatly. They could not see your ending. Every time they tried to follow the threads of your destiny, the pattern fractured, split into countless possibilities. You were the first species they encountered whose future was not fixed. What does that mean? It means you are different. In all the billions of years the builders studied the cosmos, across all the countless species that rose and fell, humanity alone escaped the certainty of fate. Your future is not written. Your ending is not fixed, and that terrified them. Webb sat in stunned silence. The implications were staggering. Every other civilization in galactic history had been bound by destiny, their path from birth to death set in stone before they ever existed. But humans were free. Their choices actually mattered. Their future was truly unknown. The date, he finally said. The prophecy mentions a specific date, less than 3 months from now. What happens then? The observer's form grew brighter. That is why we have broken our silence. That date marks the convergence, a moment when the threads of all possible futures come together. For other species, the convergence would mean nothing. Their path would continue unchanged. But for humanity, whose future branches endlessly, it is different. Different how? At the convergence, humanity will face a choice. A single moment that will determine which of your countless possible futures becomes real. The builders could not see what choice you would make, but they saw the outcomes. Some paths lead to heights no species has ever reached. Others lead to destruction beyond imagining. Webb stood slowly, his mind racing. And we have less than 3 months to prepare for this choice. You have been preparing your entire existence, the observer replied. Every decision your species has ever made, every war fought, every peace achieved, every discovery uncovered, all of it has led to this moment. The only question now is what you will do when the moment arrives. The observer began to fade, its form dissolving into the dim light of the chamber. Wait, Webb called out. The section of the prophecy we can't translate. What does it say? The observer's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. That section was not written by the builders. It was written for you by the only beings who could see past the convergence. Find the truth, ambassador. Your future depends on it. And then the observer was gone, leaving Webb alone with questions that could reshape human history. The news of humanity's unique status spread faster than the original discovery. Where the first reports had sparked curiosity and debate, this revelation ignited something deeper. For the first time in human history, people from every nation, every culture, every walk of life found themselves united by a single truth. They were special. Not special in the way humans had always believed, that quiet conviction that their species mattered in a universe that seemed indifferent to their existence. This was different. This was proof, written in stone by beings who had witnessed the birth and death of countless civilizations. Humanity alone had escaped the chains of destiny. Humanity alone could choose its own ending. Dr. Tanaka worked through another sleepless night, surrounded by screens displaying her analysis of the mysterious final section. Her team had gone home hours ago, but she could not stop. Something was nagging at her, a pattern just beyond the edge of understanding. She had isolated the unknown symbols and run them through every translation matrix she could find. Nothing worked. The symbols refused to yield their secrets, defying all attempts at decryption. And yet, the more she studied them, the more familiar they seemed. At 3 in the morning, exhausted and frustrated, she made a mistake. Her hand slipped, accidentally loading an old file from her personal research archives. It was a paper she had written years ago, before she had ever heard of the prophecy chamber, about the universal constants of language development. She was about to close the file when something caught her eye. A symbol she had sketched as a theoretical example, a glyph that might evolve if a language developed in a certain way. It looked almost identical to one of the unknown symbols from the chamber. Tanaka sat very still, her heart pounding. She pulled up her theoretical language model and compared it to the mysterious section. One by one, the symbols began to match. Not perfectly, but close enough that the pattern was unmistakable. "That's impossible," she whispered. But it was not impossible. It was right there in front of her, undeniable. The unknown symbols were not the product of some ancient alien civilization. They were human. Or rather, they were what human language would become if given enough time to evolve. The final section of the human prophecy had been written in a language that did not exist yet. It had been written by humans from the future. She immediately contacted Commander Vasquez, who arrived in the laboratory within minutes. Together, they stared at the evidence on Tanaka's screens. "You're telling me that 50,000 years ago, someone carved a message in a language that won't exist for God knows how long?" Elena asked. "That's exactly what I'm telling you. The builders saw the future, but they couldn't write about humanity's fate because our future wasn't fixed. So instead, they left space for someone who could." "Our descendants," Elena said slowly, "our descendants wrote part of this prophecy. It's the only explanation that fits. The builders knew that humanity would eventually develop technology capable of bridging time. They knew we would face this moment of convergence, so they left a blank page, trusting that we would fill it in ourselves." Elena thought about the portrait in the smaller chamber, the woman with dark hair and infinite eyes. "Can you translate it?" "I can try. Now that I know what I'm looking at, I can use my evolutionary models to work backward. But it will take time, and we have less than 10 weeks until the convergence." "Then you'd better get started." As Tanaka dove back into her work, Elena made her way to the portrait chamber. She stood before the carving of the human woman, studying every detail. The face was beautiful, strong-featured, with a slight smile that seemed to hold secrets. "Who are you?" Elena asked the stone. "And what did you write for us?" The portrait, of course, did not answer. But Elena could have sworn that, for just a moment, the carved eyes seemed to gleam with recognition. At Nexus Station, the Galactic Council was in an uproar. Ambassador Webb had briefed them on his meeting with the Observer, and the reactions ranged from disbelief to outrage to fear. Representatives of species whose ancestors had risen and fallen according to the Builders' predictions demanded answers that Webb could not provide. "How can you claim that humanity is somehow exempt from fate?" the Vortani ambassador demanded. "Our ancestors achieved greatness that your species cannot imagine, yet we fell, exactly as the Builders foretold. Are you saying humans are better than us?" Webb kept his voice calm. "Not better, different. We don't understand why any more than you do, but the evidence is clear. The prophecy about humanity is not like the others. Our future is not fixed." "And this convergence," another representative interjected. "What happens if you make the wrong choice?" "Then perhaps humanity falls like everyone else, or perhaps something worse. We simply don't know." The Crystalline Remnant's spokesperson chimed with harmonic resonance. "Our ancestors spoke of the Builders before our fall. They said that the Builders were afraid of something, something that broke all their rules about the way the universe worked." "Humanity," Webb said. "Yes, the species that refused to be predicted, the chaos in their ordered universe. They could see everything, understand everything except you." Webb thought about that. The Builders, for all their power, had been unable to solve the puzzle of human existence. They had watched humanity emerge from caves, spread across their world, reach for the stars, and they had been confounded at every turn. Humans did not behave like other species. They did not follow the patterns. They asked questions no one else thought to ask, pushed boundaries no one else dared to challenge. "What if that's the answer?" he said slowly. "What if the reason we're different is because of what makes us human, our curiosity, our refusal to accept that things have to be a certain way, our endless need to understand?" The council chamber fell silent. It was a strange thing to consider, that the very traits which often caused humans trouble, their restlessness, their dissatisfaction with the status quo, their constant pushing against limits, might be the key to something greater. "The prophecy calls it a gift and a curse," Webb continued. "Maybe that's what they meant. Our nature makes us unpredictable. It breaks the rules of fate, and that same nature could save us or destroy us depending on what choices we make." The Vortani ambassador leaned forward. "So what will you do?" Webb smiled. "What we've always done. Ask questions, search for answers, refuse to accept that our future is written by anyone but ourselves. It's not much of a plan, I admit, but it's what makes us human." Back on XR 7721, Dr. Tanaka had finally cracked the code. She burst into Commander Vasquez's quarters at 5 in the morning, her tablet clutched in trembling hands. "I've got it," she gasped. "I've translated the message." Alina sat up instantly, all traces of sleep vanishing. "What does it say?" Tanaka took a deep breath. "It's coordinates. Time and space coordinates, precise to the nanosecond and the millimeter. They describe a specific location at a specific moment." "The convergence." "Yes, but that's not all. There's a second message encoded beneath the first. It took me hours to separate them." Tanaka's eyes met Alina's. "It says, 'We are waiting, come home.'" Alina felt the words strike her like a physical blow. Come home. Across 50,000 years, their descendants had reached back through time to leave a message. Not a warning, not a prophecy of doom, but an invitation. A promise that whatever awaited at the convergence, humanity would not face it alone. "Plot the coordinates," she ordered. "Find out where this takes us." Tanaka nodded and began entering data into her tablet. A moment later, a holographic star map materialized in the center of the room. The path traced from their current position, through several star systems, to a point in deep space that seemed completely unremarkable. "There's nothing there," Tanaka said, frowning. "No stars, no planets, just empty space." "Nothing there yet," Alina corrected. "Remember, this message is from the future. Whatever they're directing us to, it might not exist in our time." "So we travel to empty space and wait." "We travel to empty space and see what happens. It's not like we have a better plan." Alina began pulling on her uniform. "Contact Earth. Tell Ambassador Webb that we know where the convergence will happen, and tell him to prepare a fleet. Whatever we're about to face, we're going to meet it together." 8 weeks later, the largest fleet in human history gathered at the edge of the designated coordinates. Thousands of ships, from massive warships to small research vessels, hung in the darkness of space. They came from every human world, every colony, every outpost. Scientists and soldiers, politicians and pioneers, all united by the same purpose, to discover what awaited at the convergence. Commander Vasquez stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity, watching the timer count down. 3 days remained until the moment the builders had marked. 3 days until humanity faced whatever choice would determine their fate. "Still nothing on sensors," Lieutenant Park reported. "Just empty space." Alina nodded. She had not expected anything different. Whatever was going to happen would happen at the appointed moment, not a second before. The builders had been precise in their predictions, and there was no reason to think their descendants were any less so. Ambassador Webb's voice came through the communication system. He was aboard another ship, coordinating with representatives from the Galactic Council who had insisted on witnessing the event. "How are your people holding up, Commander?" Nervous, excited, terrified, the usual mix when you're waiting for the universe to change. Webb chuckled. I know the feeling. I've been going over the prophecy again, trying to find any clue we might have missed, the part about choices and outcomes. Do you think we'll know which choice is the right one? I don't know. Maybe that's the point. Maybe if we knew which choice led to the best outcome, it wouldn't really be a choice at all. Free will, Webb mused. The one thing the builders couldn't account for, the one thing that makes us different. Alina thought about all the choices that had led to this moment. The decision to send an expedition to XR 7721, the choice to dig deeper when they found the first traces of the chamber, the curiosity that drove Tanaka to keep working until she cracked the code. Each decision had been free, undetermined, made by humans who refused to accept that some questions were unanswerable. Maybe that's been our answer all along, she said. Not what we choose, but that we choose. That we never stop asking, never stop pushing, never accept that we're bound by fate. The timer continued its countdown. Around the fleet, the stars burned cold and distant, and somewhere beyond time, the future waited to meet the past. Dr. Tanaka spent the final hours refining her translation of the future message. There were nuances she had initially missed, layers of meaning that only became clear with repeated analysis. The language of their descendants was richer than she had first realized, capable of expressing concepts that modern human languages could not quite capture. There's something else in the message, she told Alina during their last meeting before the convergence. A word I couldn't translate because it doesn't exist yet. It seems to describe a state of being, something between knowing and feeling. The closest I can get is understanding with the heart. What do you think it means? I think it means that when the moment comes, we won't just know the right choice. We'll feel it. All our knowledge, all our logic, all our analysis will come together with something deeper, something that makes us more than just thinking machines. Alina considered this. Throughout history, humanity's greatest moments had often come not from cold calculation but from passionate conviction. The choice to stand against tyranny, the decision to reach for the impossible, the belief that tomorrow could be better than today. That's what the builders could never understand about us, she said. They saw the universe as a machine, every event following logically from every other. But we don't work that way. We dream, we hope, we love. And sometimes those things matter more than all the predictions in the world. Tanaka smiled. Maybe that's why they were afraid of us. Not because we were dangerous, but because we represented something they couldn't control, something wild and free and utterly unpredictable. And now we're about to find out if that wildness can save us or destroy us. Either way, it's going to be one hell of a discovery. The final countdown began. Across the fleet, millions of humans watched their chronometers tick toward the moment of convergence. Some prayed. Some held hands with loved ones. Some simply watched the stars and wondered what would come next. On the bridge of the Unity, Alina felt a strange calm settle over her. She had spent her life exploring the remains of dead civilizations, studying the bones of species that had risen and fallen according to inescapable destiny. Now she stood at the threshold of something entirely new, a moment that was not written, an outcome that was not determined. 1 minute, Park announced. The empty space before them remained dark and silent, no signs of anything remarkable, no hints of what was to come. 30 seconds. Alina thought of Earth, the small blue world where her species had taken its first steps. She thought of all the humans who had ever lived, from the first cave dwellers to the star travelers who now filled these ships. All of them had contributed to this moment. All of them had passed down the curiosity, the courage, the stubborn refusal to accept limits that had brought humanity to the edge of forever. 10 seconds. She took a deep breath. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then the universe opened. Light exploded from the coordinates, light of every color and no color at all. It expanded outward in a sphere that should have been blinding but somehow was not. It passed through the fleet like a wave, and every human it touched felt something change inside them. Alina gasped as understanding flooded through her. Not information, not knowledge, but something deeper. She saw the threads of possibility that the builders had described, saw how every choice created new branches, new paths, new futures. She saw the convergence for what it truly was, not a single moment of choice but an infinite series of choices, stretching backward and forward through time. And at the center of it all, she saw the question that had haunted the builders for all their existence, the question they could never answer no matter how far into the future they looked. What would humanity become? The light stabilized, forming a structure that hung in space before the fleet. It was a gateway, a portal, a bridge between what was and what could be, and through it Alina could see shapes moving. Human shapes, but changed somehow, advanced, evolved. "They're here," Tanaka whispered over the communication channel. "Our descendants, they've come to meet us." A voice spoke from the gateway, broadcast on every channel in the fleet. It was a human voice, warm and familiar despite the unfamiliar words. "Children of Earth, we have waited for this moment across ages untold. We have built this bridge through time so that we might stand together at the point of convergence. We have come to help you make the choice that will determine everything." Alina found her voice. "What is the choice?" The voice was gentle, understanding. "The choice is simple, and yet it is everything. You must decide what humanity means. Not what we are, but what we choose to be. Not what destiny demands, but what freedom creates." "I don't understand." "You will. Look into the light, Commander. Let it show you the paths. And then choose the one your heart tells you is right." Alina stared into the light of the gateway and saw visions of possibility unfold before her. Each path was a complete history, a story of humanity stretching from the present into eternity. And each path was different, shaped by a single fundamental choice. In one vision, she saw humanity choose power. They took the technology of their descendants and used it to conquer. They spread across the galaxy like a storm, overwhelming every species in their path. They became an empire greater than any the builders had ever predicted, vast and terrible and utterly alone. In another, she saw humanity choose safety. They retreated to their home systems, built walls of technology around their worlds, and cut themselves off from the dangers of the universe. They survived, but they stopped growing. They became caretakers of their own stagnation, frozen in time while the cosmos moved on without them. There were darker visions, too. Paths where humanity's choices led to war, to destruction, to an ending as final as any the builders had predicted for other species. She saw worlds burn and civilizations crumble. She saw the light of human consciousness flicker and die. But there was one vision that called to her more strongly than any other. One path that felt right in a way that transcended logic or analysis. She saw humanity choose curiosity. In this vision, humans did not conquer or hide. They explored. They asked questions. They reached out to other species not as conquerors or refugees, but as fellow travelers on the long road of existence. They shared what they learned and learned from what others shared. They made mistakes, terrible ones, but they learned from those too. And slowly, generation by generation, they became something new. Not the builder's vision of an ordered universe where every outcome was predetermined. Not the chaos of pure randomness where nothing mattered. Something in between, where choice and consequence danced together in an endless spiral of discovery. Alina understood now why the builders had feared humanity. It was not because humans were dangerous, though they could be. It was not because they were unpredictable, though they were. It was because humans represented a possibility the builders had never considered. That the universe could be both orderly and free, that meaning could arise from choice rather than fate. "I see it," she said softly. "I understand." The voice from the gateway spoke again. "Then make your choice, Commander. Speak for your species. choose what humanity will become." Alina turned to face the fleet. Millions of humans waited for her words, watching through cameras and sensors and their own enhanced perceptions. She was just one person, one voice among billions. And yet in this moment she spoke for all of them. "We choose to ask," she said. "We choose to wonder. We choose to look at the universe not as something to be conquered or feared, but as something to be understood. We choose curiosity because that is what makes us human. That is what has always made us human." She thought of all the questions humanity had ever asked. Why does the sun rise? What are the stars? Is there life beyond our world? Each question had led to new understanding, and each understanding had led to new questions. An endless cycle of discovery that stretched back to the first human who looked up at the night sky and wondered. We choose to learn from every species we meet, to share what we know and seek what we don't. We choose to be students of the universe, forever incomplete, forever growing. We choose to make mistakes and learn from them. We choose to fail and try again. The light of the gateway pulsed with each word, as if responding to her conviction. We choose to be kind when we can and brave when we must. We choose to hope even when hope seems foolish. We choose to believe that tomorrow can be better than today, not because fate guarantees it, but because we will work to make it so. She paused, feeling the weight of the moment settle around her. We choose our own destiny. That is our answer. That is our choice. For a long moment, silence filled the void. The gateway hung motionless before them, its light neither growing nor fading. Then, from within its depths, the shapes of their descendants moved forward. They stepped through the barrier of time and stood among their ancestors. They were tall, graceful, their features clearly human, but enhanced in ways that spoke of millennia of evolution. And in their eyes was the same light of curiosity that had driven humanity from its first steps on Earth to this moment at the edge of eternity. One of them, a woman with dark hair and infinite eyes, approached Alina. She was the woman from the portrait, the author of the message across time. "Well chosen," she said, and her voice was gentle with the wisdom of ages. "Your answer is the same one we gave long ago. The same answer that our descendants will give to their moment of convergence and theirs after them. It is the answer that breaks the cycle of rise and fall, the answer the builders could never understand." "What happens now?" Alina asked. The woman smiled. "Now everything changes and nothing changes. You will return to your lives, your worlds, your explorations, but you will carry with you the knowledge of what you truly are. Not the species that escaped fate, but the species that chose its own path. And will you stay?" "We cannot. The gateway exists only at the convergence when the threads of possibility align, but we leave you with gifts, the technology to build new wonders, the knowledge to understand old mysteries, and most importantly, the certainty that you are not alone." She gestured, and from the gateway poured streams of light that flowed into every ship in the fleet. Data, schematics, scientific principles, historical records, the accumulated wisdom of a humanity that had grown and learned across unimaginable spans of time. "Use these well," the woman said. "Remember that every choice matters, every question asked, every act of kindness. These are the things that make a species worthy of the stars." The descendants began to withdraw toward the gateway. But the woman paused and looked back at Alina with eyes that seemed to hold all of human history. "There is one more thing. The builders asked a question they could not answer. What would humanity become? We still don't know. Even now, after all this time, our future remains unwritten, and that is exactly as it should be." She stepped through the gateway and the light began to fade. As it dimmed, Alina heard a final whisper carried across the boundary of time. "Keep asking questions, keep wondering, keep reaching for what seems impossible. That is your destiny, the one you write with every choice you make." The gateway closed, leaving only darkness and stars, but the darkness felt different now. Not empty but full of possibilities, not threatening but inviting. Commander Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Unity, surrounded by her crew, looking out at a universe that was suddenly larger than it had ever been before. The Galactic Council would need to be briefed. The new knowledge would need to be studied. 1,000 questions would need to be asked and answered. She smiled. That was exactly the way it should be. "Park," she said, "set a course for home. We have a lot to tell people." "And after that?" the lieutenant asked. Alina looked at the stars, at the infinite mysteries waiting to be explored, at the endless questions waiting to be asked. She thought of the builders, frozen in their certainty, and of her own species, free in their curiosity. She thought of all the tomorrows that stretched out before humanity, unwritten and beautiful. After that, we do what we've always done. We explore, we learn, we grow. She turned to face her crew, her expression bright with purpose. "The universe is full of questions, Lieutenant, and we're going to find every single answer." Around them, the fleet came alive with activity. Ships powered up their engines. Communications channels buzzed with excited chatter. Millions of humans, touched by the light of the convergence, began the journey home with new understanding in their hearts. Somewhere among the stars, the observers watched and wondered. They had seen the rise and fall of countless species, the endless cycle of birth and death that had seemed so inevitable. But now they had witnessed something new, a species that had broken the cycle, a species that had chosen its own fate. And for the first time in their ancient existence, they felt something that might have been hope. Back on Earth, Dr. Tanaka watched the fleet's return on her screens. She had already begun cataloging the knowledge that had poured through the gateway, organizing it into categories that would take generations to fully explore. But she was not daunted by the task. She was energized by it. The prophecy of humanity had been fulfilled, not because fate demanded it, but because humans had chosen to fulfill it. They had looked into the darkness and refused to look away. They had reached for things beyond their grasp and, in reaching, had grown. They had asked questions that others feared to ask and found answers that changed everything. This was their nature. This was their curse. This was their gift. And as she turned back to her work, surrounded by the mysteries of a universe that would never run out of secrets, Dr. Yuki Tanaka smiled. The story of humanity was just beginning, and it was going to be one hell of a story.